It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. All right, we're podcasting. We're live. It's going on. We're talking about the status of the next big things. You know, they pop up and people get all excited and then they seem to drop off the radar. So I've been doing a little bit of research, and by research, I mean typing prompts into ChatGPT, and there's a lot of them. I looked for successful and ones that flopped, and I'm just going to read through them real quick. Wearable tech, VR, AI, that's from there's a 2017 AI, 5G tech, remote work and collaboration tools. Generative AI was last year, and things that flopped was augmented reality. Blockchain is kind of on the bubble. NFTs are flop, metaverse, things like that. And of course, I bought a 3D television, and the glasses never stayed charged long enough to get through a movie.
You just needed the corded ones.
I had it, and so I'd have it plugged in, and I'm wearing it, and it's like adding a little extra weight. Yeah, it just didn't work out.
Sounds awesome.
No, it doesn't.
I mean,
all right,
in the most sarcastic way possible.
So we had made some predictions, what's going to happen with AI and things like that. Oh, I forgot to mention IoT. So Peter, you had mentioned kind of the media aspect and the 24-hour news cycle.
Well, yeah,
and all of that.
You gotta fill the news, and you gotta fill it all the time, as we can, tell with everything that comes through. It's like ChatGPT had a little bit of success, and all of a sudden you could not, and still really cannot get away from ChatGPT, at least in the technical and sort of semi-technical space of media. Yeah, it's going to take over the world. It's going to be magic. It's going to do everything. It continues to not do those things after over going on, 2 years since we've started talking about it? Maybe a year and a half?
Year and a half, right? Because I think it was GPT-3 was November of 2022. Is that right?
I think that's right.
Like that,
yeah.
Right. And then nobody really heard about it until January, I think, is when everybody started talking about it.
That's when somebody in the press got a demo or something and the race was on.
I think it was when they realized that people were writing their term papers, things like that. Is that the right term? Term papers?
Yeah. I thought that was later. Problems.
Was it? Okay.
I don't know.
Because that's maybe when I caught up to it. I'm always kind of behind the curve on stuff.
So it bears mentioning that the technology behind a lot of this, like the transformer model, I think that the first paper on attention mechanisms came out in 2016, 2017. So this stuff's been in the ether for a while, and they've had GPT models that have been, quote unquote, scary good for a while.
Right.
It was just I think GPT 3.5 maybe that really captured the imagination. That's really the only thing that changed, I think, at that point. It's
did they put a good user interface on it? Is that the difference?
I mean, they trained it on more data. They put a better user interface on it, but the tech itself has been around for a while,
Right.
I think part of it has to do with the company too, right? OpenAI has a personality behind it that a lot of the academic research around this hasn't. I don't necessarily get super excited about reading some of the Cambridge stuff that comes out and the MIT stuff that comes out. Nobody really reports on that. Nobody cares until Sam Altman, that's the dude's name, right? Altman gets out there and gets billions of dollars from Microsoft and releases a product that actually kind of fascinates a few folks. We've mentioned the Practical AI podcast a few times now, a lot.
Yep.
I still listen to it religiously, but what I did do is when you go back, I actually drove to Nashville and I listened to some of their older episodes. And those guys have been doing it for a long time. They started there, I think it was 2015. And it's so fun to listen to them talk about AI and talk about all the things that we kind of just, know now. But before we all knew it, right? So they've been talking, like John's been saying, they've been talking about this forever. And then the Practical AI podcast, when OpenAI becomes a press darling, right? Their listenership just explodes. And then, now they're talking about it really constantly, and but they haven't really changed. It's the same two dudes. They're still talking
Right.
about like what they think is cool, and they just have an audience now.
Yeah, I think the finding a use for it. It's like the hype comes out, everybody gets excited, but like, what do we do with it? How do we do it? How do we move forward?
Well, what were our predictions last year? What were we saying, Kyle? You said you were going to look into
Yeah.
the things. That
Well,
we said.
I
didn't-
remember that you said that it's not going to replace. It has not, even though I've seen claims of, it'll write your program for you. Just tell it what you want.
Yeah, that's not really the case. I don't think anybody ever really thought that that you'd be able to give. I think the fugue state was like you can give an AI to like a product manager, and a product manager, instead of having to work with us shitty developers, is going to be able to say like, I'm just going to tell AI what to build me, and that's kind of the fugue state that Kyle's getting at there.
Right.
If I remember right, we had a lot of conversations around how it's just going to be kind of built side saddle into the tools that we use every day, and it might make us a little bit better at that. And I think I'm seeing that. I almost wish like I don't need a generative AI in PowerPoint. Like I really don't. But it is kind of cool in JetBrains and PyCharm and all the tools that I enjoy using. So when it's adapted intelligently and where it makes sense, I love it. I think it's great. John, are you using it too? Like, are you using like in your IDEs and everything else? Is it helping you? Yeah.
Yeah, I've used Copilot. I've gone to ChatGPT for, resolutions to some tougher coding problems that I've run into. And while I agree with you that this is not going to like replace developers, at least not anytime soon, I do think that, and I have no data to back this up, this is entirely conjecture, but I do think it's going to lead to less demand for developers. I think you can get by with fewer developers with these kinds of tools. And like, I think what made that clear to me was actually the podcast project that I did here at SEG. Kyle gave me a bunch of podcasts and was like, try and kind of group these by theme, kind of figure out what the common themes are that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty typical like topic modeling kind of setup. And I did a topic modeling project a few years back as a like kind of freelance gig. It took me about 4 weeks to get everything set up and like tune my model, set the parameters correctly, do all of the like end-to-end stuff. But now Amazon just has a managed service called Comprehend, and I just gave it the data and I was like, give me a topic model. It did a fantastic job, and I got it done. I got the topic modeling part of this done in like 3 hours. Something that used to take me 3 or 4 weeks, 3 hours now. And so I think that those kinds of productivity gains really can only lead to probably like less demand for some of these positions.
I will speculate a little differently than that. I've got two thoughts that have come up. I don't know how beginning developers are going to become seasoned developers because they're always going to be leaning on this tool a little bit harder. I don't know, John or Chad, if you guys or Kyle for that matter came up in the age before Google existed and developed during that time. It was a little bit different, right? You might have to go to the manuals to look up methods and find things yourself, or find somebody else in your company that had done a similar thing and word of mouth and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know how those guys are going to get seasoned if they've always got the AI, doing the work for you.
Yeah.
To your point, some of the more non-programmer but programmers have to do it tasks, I think is going to be super awesome. I don't know. I mean, programming can be said to be taking strings of data and putting out different strings of data, and eventually computers will get good at that. But I don't know. It's going to be it'll be beyond my lifetime.
I look at it like, I use different platforms. I'm a configurator more than a actual like developer programmer. You still have to know the logic of it, and there's just things you still have to do that I think that's going to get easier. The idea that AI can watch you and say, hey, do you want me to automate that task you do every week? And things like that, the watching you part, like I'm divided on. Chad, you had asked about like what predictions we made, and I mined the stuff that the transcripts that John made using Whisper, which has a lot of flubs and accuracies and stuff. And then I ran it through ChatGPT. So we predicted that AI could be involved in criminal cases, impersonating real people, leading to identity theft and all that. AI and tool integration, they'll incorporate AI, but maybe not necessarily in a beneficial or efficient manner. Do you remember talking about that, Chad?
I don't, but I think I literally just said that. I don't need AI in PowerPoint, but there it is. I do need AI in IntelliJ, and there it is. We are in the midst of an election year. I don't know if the impersonation and all that stuff is going to become a factor in this yet, but I think it's an exciting time to find out, or not.
I really want
for it.
Yeah, I really want to be able to upload my picture and then watch myself in Die Hard, like instead of Bruce Willis. But I don't know if that'll happen. So hype technologies we talked about. Overhyped stuff, is AI overhyped? Like when SharePoint 2007 came out, it was overhyped, and it was one of those tools that it took off. I think its growth was like more successful than Excel was at the time, and people didn't really know what to do with it. And it's things like that. We talked about quantum computing revolutionizing optimization and cryptography and making current encryption methods obsolete. Cloud services.
I don't think the quantum stuff is, I think everybody kind of like dropped something because something else really cool was making everybody a lot of money, right? Like, I don't think it's almost like, I don't know that it's like the .com boom, but like there's been kind of a mini explosion of AI companies, right? Who just get money thrown at them. And I mean, I don't think quantum is still seems like a research project and not a viable product for anybody. But I still think that there's probably going to be something there. I just think the time scale is much longer than, we're not going to.
Do you think the two will come together based on the amount of energy needed to run today's AI? I mean, so much compute power to find out the recipe for peanut butter cookies. Is that really what we need?
I don't know. AI is all just math, right? It's all just linear algebra.
Mm-hmm.
Is quantum better suited to do that than
Probably
GPUs?
Probably not.
Maybe not, right?
But maybe there'll be a quantum breakthrough for AI.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Are they going to be able to divert all of the processing power from NFTs over to AI? I remember we talked about NFTs and I was like, this is bogus. It's not going to happen. These things are stupid, imaginary. Like, here's the representation of a thing. Give me money for it. You're the one that owns that now. Like, okay, we named a star after you. Oh, great. Thank you. That means so much. Business process, like automation, speeding up development, all of that kind of stuff. I think we talked about, and that's, I use a lot. Sometimes it's just to clarify things. I've been using Copilot in MS365, and basically it wants to summarize things for you. That's its main goal, it seems like, because I see that everywhere. Do you want help with this? Do you want me to summarize it? It reminds me of my little brother. Like, do you want to play? Do you want to go outside and play? It's like,
does Clippy pop up and help you?
I was about to say Clippy. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, I think, the prediction as well. I remember you guys saying Clippy back we were talking about last year.
Sadly, Microsoft did not learn the lesson of Clippy when they removed it and then brought it back with an AI backing, huh?
So AI cloud services we talked about, and like AWS being initially overhyped, but now have proven like themselves or itself. And it's like when it's new and it's just ramping up, like you have this vision of what you want it to be. It's not there yet, but people get excited about it. Like, is it even possible that these things are not going to be overhyped?
Probably not possible. I was just going to see if I could find out when AWS came online for the first time ever.
I want to say it was like 2010-ish, 2009-ish, right? Because they released S3 buckets, was one of the first services that AWS threw out there.
Cloud computing, 2006, 18 years ago. Web services, 2002. That's according to Wikipedia, which is never wrong. So, but that was at the forefront of cloud, right? That was when people were starting to hype the cloud. As a developer in those years, you'd sit back and be like, someday we'll get enough money to do that, but not today. We're still stuck with our, on-prem stuff, and that computer room with all the fans and stuff isn't going to go anywhere for a really long time. Turns out it's about.
It was an exciting day when I shut off our server rack, and I thought we're gonna save so much money on power. Like, this is great. I'm a hero. And then it was like, well, that's included in our lease. We don't have to pay for the. And that made me sad.
Don't worry, you're paying to charge somebody's car right now, or your savings have led to the cars being able to be charged.
I'm helping.
That would be hilarious if the rack power that we were using to do nothing is switched over to charge cars.
Chad, I know you got into Dogecoin, right? And we're excited about that initially.
Yeah. I made a lot of money on Dogecoin. It was, so I don't know, John doesn't know this story, but like this was a while ago. So this is probably 2019-ish. I was at a bar with one of my kids and he was telling me, he's like, Dad, look at this. And I'm like, well, that's really stupid. And it's just a coin based on this stupid looking dog. And I was bored and I had money. So I put $100 in it when it was less than a penny. And then it shot way up. And I cashed out. I held a little too. You
didn't get the top?
I didn't get the peak, but I caught it as it was coming down. And I can't be mad at that, right?
No.
Now, we're not going to base a national economy on that or, and I'm not going to, buy a new truck.
We notice you're still working here for now anyway.
Everybody needs their hobbies, Peter.
He's a volunteer. He doesn't really get paid, so it's fine.
But it was stupid and fun. And I think as I think a lot of that cryptocurrency stuff, the technology, the blockchain itself is kind of cool, right? It is not a career. And it's not going to disrupt any kind of monetary system. If you like gambling, and if you like sports betting or whatever, it's kind of a geeky version of that. And that's fun, kind of. And I got lucky once and I am not going to get lucky again. So I'm out. I had my fun.
So would you call crypto a success? It was for you at that moment. It was for you. You had success.
I'll call Bitcoin a success right now.
I think it depends on what you mean by a success, right? Like, did Bitcoin go up in value and is it like worth a lot of money today? Sure. But like, is that your definition of success for Bitcoin? As it is, Bitcoin's really only used for, drug purchases on the dark web for the most part, right? Like it's not a currency that people actually use. And it's actually really inefficient to try and use it as a currency because of all the like blockchain transactions that have to go through. Like it kind of set out as like, we want to create a digital money that like operates in the way that money operates. And it's just not that, right? Like, yeah, it's got a value. It's got like speculative value, I guess, but I don't think it succeeded in its original goal, at least.
Did it circumvent the evil banks that are controlling everything?
No, they can
allow us.
They can hold crypto too.
Banks still exist.
Yes.
What I was surprised at is the year, the April after I sold everything, having to explain it to the guy that does my taxes, was fun. But like, to his credit, he knew about it. He's like, hey, you haven't done any of that weird, and I'm like, oh, actually, yeah, we should talk about that. So I was amazed at how quickly the IRS got interested in all of that. And I used Robinhood, right? So they had a transaction, they had a record of it that was reported anyway. So like,
it's not like the governance and regulation of these things always comes after they see what all the issues are. And I remember when gift cards kind of started up, like, well, who owns that money? What's happening with that? It hasn't been cashed in yet. So you got this $100 floating around for future purchases, but like, did they have to pay taxes on that? Like, so that was a big question. I really never knew what happened to that, but that's what it reminded me of. Electric cars, self-driving cars. We talked about that.
Still want my flying car, man.
Oh, here's they have
those.
Fact.
It's called an airplane.
I didn't realize that in Phoenix, and this is a baseball tie-in. In Phoenix, they actually have a completely self-driving cab service.
Right.
I think that's the only one in the country, as far as I'm aware. But I only found out about it because the Corey Provost, the commentator on the Twins game, I follow him on Twitter, and he got in a cab and he got in the back seat, and there's no driver, and it, there's a certain area in Phoenix that it drives you around, and I didn't realize that was a thing. I don't think it's run by Google, not Tesla.
Right.
Evidently, that's a thing that exists in one very specific region of a warm climate.
See, and I saw it for a different reason, because there was a story about one getting pulled over for driving on the wrong side of the road. I saw that one. That's how it came to my attention.
That
like,
video
those
is hilarious.
things are still going.
And the cops are talking to like a call center operator, and does that call center guy get a ticket?
I mean, I'm impressed that the person who wrote the software had the forethought to say, if there's flashing red lights behind me, what do I do?
That makes me want to pull over an electric car and get some flashing lights. Sorry, Chad, I derailed you.
Well, no, I didn't realize, like, I didn't think about the process of self-driving car getting pulled over by the popo.
It's a different driving experience, right? It's not one that you would definitely put in the, like, you want to watch for kids and dogs running in the middle of the road probably is first, but eventually you got to get to the lines of code where you're going to pull the car over, have the customer service people come online, have the conversation, find out the address where the ticket gets sent, et cetera, right?
Does this mean we're not going to have any more high-speed chases? That sucks.
They're all going to be low speed.
Yeah.
No, the EU is putting an end to high-speed chases, I've heard.
Yeah.
Speed limiting cars to 88.5 miles an hour, so we don't time travel.
So what was with those big Stanley thermos mug things? Like
The ones that have lead in them?
Is that?
Yeah, they turn out to have lead in them.
Not a lot.
Oh,
I don't. Anybody on this right now is the target market for that, so I can't
We're
speak
not.
intelligently.
No.
I have no idea. I don't know. I would. So I remember, had it come out so this time last year, were we talking about the Apple Vision Pro yet, or was that later?
I think
one
it was
was
a
while I
little
was
bit later,
here, so
but
it's been since
we were
February.
starting to hear talk of it for sure.
I was super hyped for that. But I just read an article that talked about it, and I think it's still an amazing technology. But they said the sales have just cratered. Basically, everybody that wanted one got one right away, and then nobody else. Which sounds like a huge bummer, but also sounds like an incentive for Apple to fix the price point and make it available to people that aren't maybe early adapters and,
Right.
I think that's like the best example of something just dropping off the radar. I mean, that thing, all of a sudden, it just disappeared. Like, the last thing I heard about is people that wore them for a really long time were having issues, and then just nothing else.
I almost wonder, though, if we go back to 2007 and look at the trajectory of the very first iPhone, right? Like, if everybody got super pumped about it,
Right.
and then everybody got one, right? And then just like a year or two went by until, so I think it was the iPhone 3 was the first one for some reason. Is that right? The iPhone 3 seems like the very first form factor I remember iPhone coming in was that they called it the 3. Does that sound right? Yeah. And then the 4 came out and everybody got super excited because the form factor actually looked kind of, I don't remember when the 3 came out, like it was Fruit Ninja and Killer, like Angry Birds. Fruit Ninja and Angry Birds were like killer apps for that thing.
Right.
I remember actually I was at Capella and Helmberger had one, and he had Fruit Ninja. He's like, look at this. And I swear to God, I sat in a conference room with his iPhone.
You
playing
swiped
Fruit-
and swiped.
Yeah, playing Fruit
So much
Ninja
fruit.
for like a solid 45 minutes. And I'm almost relieved that they weren't as ubiquitous. I didn't get a smartphone for probably a couple years after that still. But my attention span back then would have just been obliterated had I been an in-office employee with an iPhone playing freaking Fruit Ninja during whatever.
Everything.
I did not have the self-control I have now back then.
I've owned 2 Windows phones, to my shame. I'm going to admit that.
Sorry to
My name
hear
is
that.
Kyle, and I've owned 2 Windows phones.
It didn't quite kill
And-
the iPhone, did it?
Well, see, my hope was, or my thinking was, like, they're going to develop apps for, like, the tools I use, you
Right.
know, the platform I work with for this phone. And Microsoft made a really good decision and said, we're going to release these for the iPhone first, Android second. and for our phone, third. And that's when I went and got an Android phone. That
Not
was
the
a
iPhone,
bummer.
though, huh?
No, I've never really been an Apple guy.
Wasn't the Windows Phone, wasn't that made by Compaq? I kind of remember Compaq having a phone right when they were dying as a computer company, as a PC company.
I
think
have no idea.
Compaq did have a Windows Phone.
Hang on
LG
a
was the biggest one that I remember. Or
Yeah, I
Nokia
think-
had a Windows Phone, right?
I'm not wrong. They actually
Nokia-
called it, originally enough, the iPAQ, IPAQ.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my God, the creativity of
That's like that's
2000
that was like was that the first one they made? Because
I
the
don't-
first
I don't
one I
know.
had was a Nokia. It had a slide out thing, and it was like a version of the Windows desktop, and everything was
Yep.
way small. So Microsoft, like, it's like they just moved their desktop app or their PC app over to the phone. And then that didn't work out for them. So then they made the, Windows 8 like a phone,
So, fun fact, I
and that
still
didn't
have.
work.
This is the very first Android phone that they ever made.
Yep.
It's the Google wait, is it? This is the one right from Google, the G1.
Yeah.
Nice.
Who made this?
Motorola, I think.
Yeah, I think you might be right. But slide out keyboard, instead of a touchscreen, it has a little. You can't see it, can you? Little
little-
mouse there.
Oh.
Little eraser.
Yeah. And my battery, the battery at some point exploded internally, so it won't turn on anymore. But yeah, this was a fun, stupid little toy that I keep for whatever reason.
Yeah,
I
I've got a
won't
box
give my
full of
in.
old phones that are probably going to cause a fire at some point.
Yeah.
I follow a Reddit that's like called Comfy Pillows, I think, and it's just pictures of batteries that have swelled up like a python that ate an animal that deserved it. I don't know.
One step
So-
away from bursting into flames.
So before the ChatGPT thing, there was the machine learning, like a few years before that was
Yep.
like got big. So how did that transform into what we have now? I'm looking at you, John.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the ML part was like not really a hype cycle. It didn't really reach the level of hype I think that things like NFTs and crypto did. It I think was a bit more of a quiet occurrence in the market, if you will. But really what drove that was the development of, or not the development, but they'd been around for a long time, was like these neural network models, right? Like machine learning's been around for a long time. A lot of like the basic models were developed in the 50s and 60s. So like the
Right.
technology behind a lot of what we call machine learning today is not that new. The only thing that really did change in like the 2010s, I guess, was the availability of compute power that would allow you to run these like neural network models in a way that you wouldn't be able to if you're just, kind of tied to a single workstation. But I think that the fact that there are a lot of data scientists at companies all over the place, and machine learning is kind of everywhere in companies that handle data, shows that the machine learning revolution, if you will, I don't know, that's probably too grandiose a term, but it has kind of revolutionized the way that people do business, and I wouldn't count that as a hype. Right. I think the AI kind of gets into hype, right? That's
Right.
a slightly different question.
Well, and I think it got popular in manufacturing, right, where identifying defects through machine learning was pretty common, as far as I know. Like scanning, taking pictures of it, having the machine learning figure out, oh, this is a defect, this is not, etc.
Yeah, and I think that also it was a lot of these models previously were kind of in the world of academic studies of statistics, and the purpose of the models was really like forming a theoretical kind of framework that explains a phenomenon, right? Let's use these models to explain what's going on. And I think the change was when we started using them for prediction. Like they became good enough at explaining that they were useful for prediction, and that also happened around that time, which I think neural nets really made a big difference there, because they can handle a problem set that traditional models just can't.
Well, they can be trained, right? And they can
be trained. Well, I mean, yeah, pretty much any model is going to be trained, but the difference between like deep neural nets and, just say like a support vector machine or something like that is like a deep neural net has several layers of computation that are happening, instead of usually in most algorithms, it's kind of like a single optimization problem you're trying to solve.
Right.
and they're good at finding like what are called like nonlinear relationships in data, because a lot of data doesn't kind of follow a linear trend, and a lot of the tools that data scientists have kind of assume linear trends and normal distributions of data.
Right.
And that's just not how the real world works a lot of the time. And, these neural nets are really good at accounting for kind of inconsistencies and data that doesn't fit the theoretical framework you're working on.
So is it going to get to a point where you're going to have a virtual doctor?
Not anytime soon.
Don't we have virtual doctors reading X-rays right now?
I mean, there are places where you can use AI to like augment the work of a doctor, but I think that the actual doctor is going to remain probably a human for quite some time.
So just like programmers, it'll help the doctor be faster, more efficient, but not necessarily eliminated.
I mean, like machine learning did a lot in the realm of like medical imaging, for instance. You can pass in images of an X-ray and it will identify cancer cells in a way that, a human pathologist might not be able to catch. And it can do it at a scale that you couldn't before, right? So that's right. The kinds of things that you're going to see like payoffs of machine learning. But
that's where I was going with it too, is that I think for me, and we might have even talked about this previously, but so my daughter has a heart condition, right?
Right.
Her surgeon has to look at hundreds of scans and images, and she's got the whole cardiovascular system, and hope to God that he finds, the right little the spot there. And he does my daughter, and he's popular, so he does, dozens and dozens of other adults now. And the ability for machine learning to help that guy out, I mean, that's freaking critical,
Yeah.
Not just, and so I don't want machine learning algorithms to produce a diagnosis, but I do want him to augment the surgeon, just like he would augment, just like machine learning helps augment my ability as a developer. Just to highlight, like, hey, maybe pay closer attention to this little part here, right? Like find abnormalities in MRI scans or whatever scan you're looking at, and raise it as a concern to an actual human to make a decision. That's how we use. That's how I use IntelliJ and plugins and everything else. I'm like, hey, I'm going to write code. Help me write this little bit of code, and then refactor this. Help me find, mistakes. And it does that really, really well. I am so bored with, not bored, but the generative aspects of AI. It's so, like Sean said, it's kind of it's cool, right?
Yeah.
But what I've seen now is that trickle into social media so much. So like for me, if I look at Facebook, I don't see all my high school buddies and pictures of their kids or their grandkids anymore. I see 50% of the articles written by AI and just dumped out there, right?
Right.
And it's super, super easy. And it's not just the articles, it's images associated with those articles, so
right.
I was a huge Star Wars nerd. Still am. And so I'd follow, Lucasfilm on Facebook, and I'd get updates on the movies and blah, blah, blah. Well, now like half of that content is all AI generated with images that look like, like, oh, God, geez, I didn't realize there was a new Mark Hamill Luke's. Nope, that's AI, right? So boring. And so, I don't know. It just turns you off to that whole thing. So now I just look at it.
It's like artificial sweetener.
Yeah.
Like there's always some weird, some aftertaste. And it's like, yeah, it was sweet, but then it sucked.
Do y'all think that social media might be an example of something that was overhyped?
I don't know that it was ever overhyped, but I think it rode its wave, and now it's like kind of leveling off a bit, right? Kind of.
Yeah.
I say kind of because like my daughter still like just scrolls through TikTok. But for the most part, I think my use case for all of that now is, I'll still post pictures of, whatever, because like I said, I like to keep in touch with high school buddies, but I don't I don't obsess over it at all. Like I'll throw out a picture of me at a Twins game or, me and my daughter somewhere or whatever. But I don't obsess over all of the other stuff. But primarily for me now, it's just a communication platform. All of my kids are on Snapchat, so I have to be on Snapchat. But I don't like all the stories.
I think what hit us hard with social media, sorry, John, is that it was going to replace news for a lot of people.
I mean, that was the hype, right? It was getting news stories from people on the ground right as it happened.
Yeah.
Right.
Part of it, right?
That was the idea.
Yeah. For me, it served prior to AI. It served more as a news aggregator for me than a news source, right? Like, it was really convenient to go to Twitter and see like the New York Times and all of the news story. Like, without Google Reader, I lost kind of that aggregation of all my favorite news sources. So my ability to build a targeted news feed for me went away when Google Reader went away, and then, RSS kind of fell by the wayside. And so social media for a little bit for me was like this nice little aggregation of all my favorite things. And now it's like filled with AI crap, and that just sucks.
Maybe it's not that it went through a hype cycle, but it became, I guess, try to keep it clean for the podcast, encrapified maybe, right?
Oh, that's who is it? Cory Doctorow, right? That's his whole thing. In-shitification. I think you can say that. That's a decent
You can say
word.
it. Okay.
He's got a whole concept around this thing called in-shitification, where something that used to be great and amazing, the natural trajectory of that is to become worse, right? Like,
right.
And that applies. Like, he's got so many examples of it. It's super interesting. And there's a whole podcast episode where we could talk about everything around that.
I heard a couple announcements. One is the Samsung Galaxy Ring and watch they're coming out with. I'm like, they're not going to make a ring big enough for me. So I'm out.
Where do you wear your rings, Kyle?
I don't wear rings. I don't wear jewelry. Like, this is my only jewelry I ever wear is my badge. And like, I have a Fitbit thing and I've never worn it. I was like, I'm going to get this. And then, wearable tech, Chad, do you have an Apple Watch?
I have a love-hate relationship with it because I don't mind it, right? Like, it's nice. It actually keeps me a little more like the killer app on it for me is the exercise stuff, like the rings. And it actually does get me up and moving around. It's like, hey, you've been sitting for 55 minutes. Why don't you stand up for a minute? That's super helpful. But all of I've muted almost every single alert except the fitness parts and the messages. And sometimes the messages get a little loud. Like, I get a lot of text messages and my watch, my wrist buzzes, and I wear this little lava thing that my daughter made for me, and it buzzes. So my phone will buzz, and then this will buzz, and then like if I'm getting a lot of them, if somebody texts like I do, which is like sometimes like 3 words at a time, I'm like, stop, and I will just throw it across the room.
Yeah. I used to have like a fitness tracker, but I stopped wearing it once I had a baby because my step counts were just too depressing.
Yeah. It was funny, John. I talked to Patrick at P-Court at STG, and I think his step count increased when he had a kid because he just like walked around with the kid to get it to, I don't know. I think his went up, but I'm with you. Like, early on, mine would have cratered.
Yeah. Switch from video games to walking around trying to get a fussy baby to sleep might change things.
Yeah. It's gotten better.
My kids were before step counters, so before I cared about them.
What has the monification, the money aspect of everybody like getting into the AI business and charging for their services for the good stuff, is that like slowing everything down? Do you think that's going to hurt AI?
I think it's necessary to a certain point. It's like, it costs a lot of money to train like ChatGPT 4.0. I mean, like a really lot of money. It costs a lot of money to like keep those servers up and running. Like, you're not going to get a ChatGPT 4.0 out of like an open source project just because there's so much money involved in supporting the infrastructure to train something like that. So
people do have to like survive and be able to eat and things like that. And, they deserve to get like remuneration for their efforts.
Yeah.
That's how the world works. So I don't mind paying. I have the premium for that one. And, I switch. I'll fire up Claude, for a month and then turn it off. And
I'm not in that game. I think when things get real expensive for business, that's when it will either become or it will enter the the Cory Doctorow area of things, because everything will be prompted with a commercial or an ad or something to pay for. this using the service. Like, oh, would you like your cheap airline tickets? And here's an ad or 3 that you have to get through. YouTube, Twitter, all those things seem to go from their free useful stage to their advertising supported to their advertising taking over stage.
So, kind of in that arena, Copilot for, Microsoft 365 is a year commitment, kind of spendy. It's like, I don't know, $900 or something.
Not very useful.
Well, I got a pop-up just now that said, 10 minutes left in your meeting. Ask Copilot for notes and action items to help you wrap things up. And thank you. I guess, I got this. I don't need, all the hand-holding and the crutches, but that's kind of, that price model is kind of a, like, I don't like it. It's like a dirty trick. They're trying to
imagine the alternative though. Like, hey, this answer brought to you by Chevrolet, right? Like,
yeah.
Sorry, I'm on the podcast.
I don't want to have sponsored content in AI because then, imagine the distrust that would come with that, right?
Oh, yeah. The training, the Google. Remember when Google didn't have ads and then it did right at the top and people were confusing the ads to the content?
Right now, that's Doctorow talks about this with the whole how Google is horrible now because like the top 5 results now are paid ads. You have to scroll down to find one that isn't. And I'll be honest, my eyesight is getting worse and worse and worse. Like I'm going to start missing that stuff.
Right. By design and by right. You're designed almost to miss that stuff.
It's almost taken over the first page of your search results.
There's no get lucky anymore.
Yeah.
And it's going to start like with AI. It's going to happen slowly, I feel like. I feel like the next step is ChatGPT, instead of having like $20 a month flat for any model you want, they're going to start charging extra if you want to like use the premium models, the 4.0, like most cutting edge stuff. And then pretty soon, like the price for that is just going to get kind of unaffordable and you're just going to be stuck with like the lesser, and then probably ads are going to get involved. It's
so we're all going to have to pony up so that we get the data centers built, the pricing models figured out, and there's like that kind of painful growth. It has to get worse until it gets better.
I don't think I think it's the opposite. I think now it's good. Right. It's good. It's kind of fun. I don't like it for the generative stuff, but I do like it for comprehension and all the other aspects of AI. I think the models will get better. The business around it is going to be worse, right? Like we're at the point now where we can kind of use it for free still. Early day Twitter, early day Facebook. Like it's this cool thing that's getting its hooks in us. And where do you go from here, right? This answer sponsored by Chevrolet. Please watch this 30-second ad before you look at your answer.
It looks like you're trying to buy something for a car. Would you be interested in this brand new blah, blah, blah?
Yeah. Now I want to pay more.
Yeah.
I pay any, like when I think Prime did this and Netflix did this, where it's like, okay, now we're going to show ads at your current subscription price, and if you don't want to see them, we're going to need another $5 a month. Okay, I'll pay it not to see ads. I don't watch network television just to avoid ads. Yeah, Chad, I think you're absolutely right. It's the alternative is a nightmare. Brought to you by Chevrolet.
And I think that that's really going to happen with pretty much any like publicly traded company, because you're really just chasing this kind of infinite growth. And like, I think at a certain point, you've kind of reached your market cap. Like there's not really any more that you can, there's no more people that you can bring in and no more customers you can find. And so the only way to continually like show profits is to cut costs, add revenue streams. And so it's kind of an inevitable cycle. I feel like if OpenAI were like actually a nonprofit, which, it's questionable like how they actually run, but a model like that could potentially show some promise to getting away from that kind of cycle. But I don't think OpenAI's structure is actually going to keep us away from that.
Microsoft and Apple just dropped out. They gave up their seats on the board because of the antitrust issues in Europe that were brought up, and they just bailed on it. Which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, totally.
Maybe it slowed down the conversion from being open source and to a nonprofit to a publicly traded company.
From fun to done.
Yeah. All right. We got 5 minutes left. Any parting thoughts, nuggets of wisdom, truth?
I think we were surprisingly correct in a lot of our predictions from a while ago. It's either we're well informed or have a lot of experience.
I think we just lay down some bunts, right? Like none of us.
We did not
really
swing for the fences.
Yeah, we didn't have any moonshots. I
We're still never having a self-driving car all the way. I
don't want to take a lot of credit for saying the most vanilla crap that I possibly could have said a year ago. But nice job, us.
Yeah, we weren't wrong.
Give yourselves a pat.
All right. I kind of see the light bulb problem happening where they made light bulbs too good. So all the light bulb makers got together and decided that if you made a light bulb that lasted more than X amount of hours, you had to pay a fine to the other companies. And, that was antitrust and all of that. And that got broken up. And but if they make the stuff to a point where you're getting everything you need out of it, what's next? I guess on top of that, are they going to get to that point?
Infinite profits or infinite ads, right?
It already passed the bar, right? I mean,
yeah.
I don't remember if it totally passed though, or if it was rigged a little bit. But
so I think with that we can shut her down and say goodbye, everybody.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you. Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.